What's going on, Dolphins? It is your boy Dillon, and I got a couple things I want to talk about today. Not so much updates. There is one update I'm gonna talk about just real fast because I forgot to update you guys on this in the swell of overall conversation. But they did just sign Noah Igbinoghene, their third first round pick, and they're only down to one more player. I believe it's Robert Hunt is the last one that they're waiting to sign. So they have almost got their entire rookie class put together, or signed rather. So there's that. So just to update you guys on that. But what I want to get into really is a conversation with one of my subscribers in the comment section that I want to give you a little bit of the taste of, and then add a little bit to that of some things that I thought about after the fact. And then there's also a tweet by Joe Shad. I believe he writes for the Palm Beach Post in Florida, and I responded to that. I quote tweeted him, right, and gave my own thing, and I'm going to give you that too, because, and I want to talk about it because it's, I mean, just like, people's ridiculousness is entertaining, and it's funny to me, but I gotta like call people out on the ridiculousness of it. So anyway, let's get into it. First, we're gonna start with the conversation that I was having with Kyle Wright. So shout out to you, Kyle. Thanks for leaving the comments and the questions. I appreciate it, and I always tell you guys to do that at the end of the videos. I mean it. I like to interact with you guys. I know things. I know the tone of my videos tends to be very serious, but I do like to interact with people. I like to, I just like to have rational conversation with people that, like to look at facts. We can differ on opinions on things, on certain things, like, for example, and we'll talk about this in a minute, the best way to handle Tua, right? Or if it was good to take him at all, right? I wouldn't have taken the risk on him, but it also depends, right? So they did, and so it depends on how they handle him and stuff from here. That's not to say, like, the reason why I wouldn't have taken him is because I think that even if you handle him as best as you possibly can, and, you build up a great team around him, he still has a pretty significant injury history to pretty, important body parts for what he needs to do as a quarterback, especially as a mobile quarterback who's going to be expected to be on the move, just as part of the normal, play design. Not to mention then if he, doesn't have a good offensive line in front of him and has to run for his life. So, with those ankle injuries, the hip injury, etc. So, and he is, by general standards, smaller. So, there are differing opinions that we can agree on as long as, the baseline facts are acknowledged by people, I don't have a problem. It's when people get ridiculous, which we will get into later as well, that then it's like I personally get frustrated. Anyway, so Kyle asked the question. I know I kind of got off topic there a little bit, or subtopic there. Kyle asked the question, do I want the NFL to cancel the regular season, and if so, for how long? So, I think I've made it pretty clear, right, to this point. I think that the best decision, the smartest decision, would be to shut down the season and the NFL just bear the brunt of it because they have the resources. I guarantee that the NFL and the billionaires could not have a season for probably a decade, right? They could probably not have football for 10 years and lose all of that money and still be fine, right? And not have that revenue, right? So like they could, because Stephen Ross, for example, he's, real estate is his big thing, right? And he has other ventures that he does, even his nonprofit, even Rise. He gets tax credits for that, right? He writes a lot of that stuff off in his taxes, especially with the fucking administration now. Not to mention his support for Donald Trump gets him immense tax breaks. So it's like, he's gonna be, he's good. He's a billionaire. He couldn't spend that money in like 10 lifetimes. So like his kids are going to be good, right? So they should bear the brunt of it. They should just pay their players, etc. That's what I think. So yes, I would want them to shut down the season unquestionably. But he asked for how long, and that's reasonable. And I think the answer is not super clear cut because it depends on some things, right? As does everything. Every situation is different. Things like this are ever changing. The world is ever changing. So you have to be able to adjust on the fly to new data and so on and so forth. But what I would say is that unquestionably for this season, they should shut down. But you have to reevaluate, right? As you go along and as you get more data. So let's see. I want the regular season to be shut down as long as necessary, so that way people's lives are not at risk. That is the main point, right? That would mean at least this year. It does heavily depend on the status of the virus in the country and whether we have treatments and vaccines for it, let alone testing, contact tracing, etc. We are a very long way away from being able to operate in the world as normal and be safe. Until that time comes, they should not be engaged in activities that only serve the purpose of entertainment and profit, right? So that's all we get from it is entertainment, but we also suffer from it, right? So we're paying for our suffering. The people, the fans, the players, right? Because if there's outbreaks, if people die, blah, 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 medical bills, what have you, we will suffer for it. And then if the season ends up getting shut down eventually anyway, which I think is likely to happen, then the fans lose out on their season anyway, right? So and then the profit, right? The other side, right? The billionaires and the NFL, that's what they care about. And that's the only thing they care about. Those two things are not worth human lives. I'm sorry, they're not. I love football. I do. Like when I was a kid, literally, me and my group of friends would play football every day. I never played for like high school or a team. I was kind of small. I was kind of dorky and nerdy, not very popular, etc. So it wasn't my group scene. I would have loved to, but it just wasn't in the cards, right? For a number of reasons. But I always played. I was a tough little fucker, and I love football, and I would love to see my Miami Dolphins play, and I would love to see them prove me wrong in my assertions about, let's say their drafts and how bad I think they've been, or about Tua. But none of that is worth taking risks for, with people's lives. It's just not. Anyway, but then he goes on, he commented back and he said, well, at least if we do, Tua can rest and start the year. So that gets me, a little bit more into it. So, I responded, yeah, I mean, the Dolphins will likely be forced into doing the right thing with him anyway, right? Because the season, I believe, will likely at some point get shut down inevitably. I feel confident that over the course of a full season, they would play him this year. I can't say with full confidence that they would start him, although I do think there is a substantial, maybe somewhere between a 20 to 40% chance that they would. At this point, I don't know. We'll have to see how the reviews are coming out of training camp to further evaluate that situation. Right now, I say maybe it's a 20 to 40% chance. I personally believe that sitting him this year, no matter what, is what's best for his health. In any event, things are going to be rolling fast from here, so we'll see how things shake out soon. But to add to that a little bit, so I think that, and as I mentioned, no matter what, there's always going to be concern and risk with him. And there should be, because he has the history, right? I can't fathom why people are just like, they allow their emotions and the shiny new toy and the hopes and dreams and possibilities to let themselves completely disregard all that other stuff or minimize it, right? And look, is it a possibility that it doesn't ever become a problem again? I guess. I'm sure there is some probability. I personally don't think that he's going to go 10, 15 years in the league and be our fucking franchise guy like everybody wants and him never get hurt again. Like, it seems ridiculous to me. But sure, I suppose there is that possibility. but I mean, there's like so many things that go into it, right? But think about this. Like, let's say we go into this season, right? And I believe that it's going to eventually get shut down. But let's say they make it through training camp because, you know, in fact, positivity rates less than 5%, and they go to every other day, and they make it through training camp, whatever. And there's no preseason, so there's not going to be any preseason games. But then we get to, September 13th, I think it is the first game of the actual season. We're going to be playing the Patriots, so we'll see then, right? Games will be played. If we get to that point and games are played, and then the season eventually gets shut down at some point. Imagine, though, we play, I don't know, 1 game, 2 games. We get a couple games in, and then the season gets completely shut down. But let's say they do start him, right? Maybe that percentage goes up from, 20 to 40%. Maybe it goes up to like 40 to 60%, right? Or something like that. Because maybe he just wows in training camp and he's looking real good and moving well on the field, etc., etc. And maybe they're like super tied in and like believe in their guys. And maybe they all turn out to be wonderful, right? But what if they don't, right? There's all these problems. And we'll get into some of the actual specifics about the draft picks in a minute. But, with the fucked up off season and the new coaching staffs, new playbooks, all the new faces, young, inexperienced guys. A lot of guys have pretty significant injury histories, including their fucking star quarterback. Like, there's all these problems that will suggest that the likelihood of the Dolphins being good, even if there's a full season, is not very high. So let's say they start him, and he goes up and plays behind that line of, Austin Jackson and fucking Eric Flowers and Ted Karras and Jesse fucking Davis and who's the Robert Hunt, right? I mean, I think it's going to be a disaster. If Tua lines up behind those guys, because that's what's projected to be the starting lineup, right? It would be Austin Jackson left tackle. I hadn't thought about this in a minute, so that's why I was kind of slow. Austin Jackson left tackle, Eric Flowers left guard, Ted Karras at center, Jesse Davis at right guard, and Robert Hunt at right tackle. If they put Tua behind him first game of the season, oh boy. I'm going to be on pins and needles the entire fucking time. But imagine they do that and he gets hurt and then the season gets canceled anyway, though. So that way, you don't at least get to see if the Dolphins can fucking overcome. I mean, not that he'd be able to go back in and play necessarily. It depends on what the injury is. Maybe, maybe not. But overcome and still have like a salvage their season, because the entire team is supposed to be drastically improved. So just because they lose their quarterback, it shouldn't kill the team, right? So I mean, we'll see, bro. Like, to me, again, it's a whole big mess. The Dolphins will likely get forced into doing the right thing. I mean, there's so many pieces that are moving here, and we have to wait to see how a lot of different things play out. And I've got a lot of concerns personally. So we'll see. And we'll actually kind of delve into those a little bit more when I get to this next thing, which is this tweet by Joe Shad. And he says in this tweet, to be honest, even with only one practice and no preseason games, anybody watching could have told you undrafted rookies Preston Williams and Nick Needham belonged on Miami Dolphins roster in 2019, and that Torrey McTyer and Mo Smith and Matt Hawk deserved spots in 2017. Okay. A lot of people are going to ask me, like, well, what exactly do you have an issue with in that statement? Well, because think about that. Think about what this season's like, right? So fans, the vast majority of the people that watch this and the Dolphins and so on and so forth, I mean, I'll speak for myself primarily, but I know there's a lot of people that are in this same boat. I don't watch college football, right? most of the time I can't. I mean, I guess now I'd be able to, although college football is getting all fucked up too because of the pandemic and shutting down in a lot of ways. But pre-pandemic, I couldn't because I was working all the time, etc., right? So I don't know. I don't get to watch these guys. So I don't have any idea of what kind of players they are in college. But then they come up, right? We get the scouting reports and the news reports and stuff like that. So I get a little bit of information. But then what are the primary ways in which we as fans get to see these guys prior to the season and, you know, have an idea of whether or not they're going to be good? Well, you have the training camp period where there's a couple things. One, they do often let fans from, you know, Florida actually attend the training camp. So some fans do actually get to go there and see training camp in person. That's obviously a very small number of people, but they get to take pictures and stuff like that, put it on social media. So the rest of us get informed that way. Plus there's also media there. Okay. But this year there's not going to be fans, and from what I can tell, there's going to be either no media or very limited media. Okay, so that's all gone. Then we get to watch them in the preseason, primarily in Game 4, and that's gone. So what do you mean? So how would anybody watching be able to know that Preston Williams, prior to the season, and Nick Needham and Torrey McTyer and Mo Smith and Matt Hawk deserve spots? Maybe the coaches on the field. It doesn't make any fucking sense. What are you talking about? To be honest, maybe you, Joe Shad, who are a Dolphins beat writer for the fucking Palm Beach Post, who has connections to people in the building. I mean, disconnected much? Do you understand the bubble that you live in? Like, maybe you have that privilege, brother, but the vast majority of us don't. So what the fuck do you mean anybody watching could have told you that these undrafted guys, they weren't even drafted, right? So like, odds are we didn't even get like scouting reports on them and shit until they actually came to the fucking Dolphins, and then beat writers finally started writing about them. Like, how does any of that make any fucking sense? It's mind-boggling. It's totally mind-boggling. And look, I mean, you know, Preston Williams, he showed some good things. He showed solid number 2 receiver, but now he has a pretty significant injury concern, and now, you know, the season's in jeopardy. Nick Needham was very up and down, did some good things, but very up and down, right? So just real quick, I do have my concerns with this roster, right? Their first draft class was not very good. If you're keeping it real, bro, it's just not very good. And like, Christian Wilkins is the one player that everybody goes to and they're like, oh, but he led rookies, or was at the top of the list or whatever for rookies. I think he led, right? In tackles. Great. But he's a defensive tackle. Okay? And if you look at the rest of the team, when you look at how we were just atrocious in the run game, we couldn't get sacks for shit or put pressure on quarterbacks, what you realize is that's because, and to his credit, he shows a lot of effort and, you know, grit and toughness and playing through the whistle and going to help get tackles where maybe some other guys gave up on the play. But that's all that means. Because he wasn't doing his job stopping shit at the line of scrimmage or behind it. Because they ran all over us, teams did. Right? And we couldn't get sacks to save our fucking lives. So you have to have it in full context. But Michael Dieter was trash. Isaiah Prince isn't even on the team anymore. Blah, 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 blah. Right? So, and this year, man, as you guys know, I would have done things way differently. I would have taken the top 2 offensive linemen, the top running back, and the top safety in the draft. With the way it played out, the Dolphins could have had all of that. And then they could have gotten either Jacob Eason or Jake Fromm. One of those actually recently fell off of my list because he apparently, I can't remember which one off the top of my head, but put out like some racist tweets or something like that. But either way, those guys were taken in the 4th and 5th round. You could have got one of those quarterbacks in the mid rounds like I would do. And then you could have gotten the 2 top offensive lineman, the top safety, and the top running back in the fucking draft, all at like the most important areas on your team, or some of the most important areas on your team, right? And then especially because if Ryan Fitzpatrick does end up starting or whatever, then that's even more reason to have been like, okay, well, you didn't have to take the quarterback high. You could have built your team up, you know, overall, as opposed to just, you know, dumping everything into that one position and then just kind of taking whatever after that. But like, and then I saw another tweet that, you know, somebody was saying that, who was it? Cornerback, Igbinoghene, right? Noah Igbinoghene. Somebody was like, he will forever be compared to DeAndre Swift in their careers. Because DeAndre Swift is the running back I would have taken, right? Well, first of all, I actually would have taken Xavier McKinney, I think it was, the safety, in the spot that I took that they took Noah Igbinoghene. I would have took him there, but then with our second round pick, I would have taken DeAndre Swift. Right? And then with our first and second first round picks, I would have taken the top 2 offensive linemen. So, man, I can't remember the names off the top of my head right now. But it wouldn't have been Austin Jackson or Robert Hunt. I tell you that much. Josh Jones was one of the names that stuck out to me. I can't remember the other ones off the top of my head. Anyway, but so, and it's true, because if Noah Igbinoghene doesn't pan out on this Dolphins squad and DeAndre Swift goes on to fucking ball, okay, well, we'll see. Anyway, that's enough. It's that's a lot of different things kind of wrapped up into one. So with that, I'm gonna get up out of here. I hope you guys appreciate my perspective. If you do, make sure you hit the subscribe button, make sure you hit the like button, make sure you hit the bell if you want to get the alerts. Share my channel and videos with your friends and family. Leave your questions, comments, concerns down in the comment section. And of course, as always, make sure you follow me on Twitter at Dillon. And with that, I am out. I'll see y'all soon. Fins up.